إسلامي وإيماني أضاء الكون وزمن بإسلامي وإيماني أضاء الكون وزمن.
Welcome back. We are at the rise of a new era. The current world as we know it is collapsing. The economic structure is in total disarray. And before we know it, we are going to be at the threshold of a new era. We have seen the coming and the going of the Egyptian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the British Empire. Now we're seeing the end of the American Empire. Each era is usually marked by a major war, and I anticipate that this era is going to be no different, that before we go into this new era, we are going to face a major war. And the question that arises is, what sort of world are we going to live in after this war? And how much of a part are we going to play in determining what kind of world it is that we are going to live in when we go into this new era? And most of you listening to this are likely to say, this is nonsense. You know, I can't make any contribution. How can I do anything? I am so weak. I've got no power. And this is a reality that we have to face with. Because on the one hand, when we look at a situation like this, we say we are powerless. Yet, under other circumstances, we proclaim that we are free people. And this is a dichotomy we have got to address. All that I am going to talk about is leading up to a proposal for how we can make a contribution to the world that is to come. And in this segment, we will be looking at who we are, where we came from, what the human being is. And in a subsequent segment, we will be looking at the world around us before we come to the final proposal. As I have stated before, this presentation is directed at believers in God. However, all believers in God are not homogeneous. We have Christians, we have Jews, we have Muslims, we have Hindu, we have the traditional Africans. Despite this diversity, if we take any particular group, whether it is the Christians, whether it is the Muslims, whether it is the Jews, there is a great diversity within each group itself. And if we look at each of the subgroups, again, they can be distinguished by being either liberal or conservative. Liberal being more modern-minded, and conservative what we would traditionally call old-fashioned. Now both these groups both believe that they are doing what is absolutely best to take mankind forward. The modern thinking person believes that the modern world is the way to go, and the way to progress is to embrace and to be part of it. Whereas the old-fashioned person believes that the teachings we have is sufficient right till the last day, and we don't need any changes. And that going the so-called modern route is in fact a step backwards. The question is, which of these two people is correct? Or in another way, how can we bring these two views together so that we all benefit from it? One thing we've got to realize, whether we're conservative or whether we're liberal, the people involved are really leaders in society. Their words have an impact. When we look at the lifestyle of modern man, if we look at the world in which we are living in right now, we realize that the kind of world in which we are living is not possible if it was not for this highly developed infrastructure that we have. Take the medical profession. Today, a doctor is not able to practice the kind of medicine without electricity, without fancy equipment, without x-rays, MRI scans, without fancy drugs. None of which would have been possible if we didn't have this highly structured society of which we are a part. But what is important is what is the foundation of the society, because if we want to remain a part of the society, if we want to continue building on what we have built right now, and it's not only the medical profession, you look at every profession, the same thing applies. What about the foundation? Because if that foundation is not solid, it's going to come crumbling down. Take for example like this, a multi-storied building. But what happens if the foundation is not solid? We end up with a situation like this. And in the end, this is what we are left with. If we do not develop a society whose foundations are solid, everything that we work for, everything that we are building is in danger of being destroyed like at the click of a finger. And it can happen. But if the foundation is solid, we can go confidently into the future. So the question we need to answer is, what sort of foundation is the foundation that will persist and persevere? In order to understand who we are, we need to get a closer look at who we are. When we examine the world around us, looking from the perspective of a medical person, we tend to look at life through the microscope. When we look through the microscope, this is what we see. But if we want to get a proper perspective of the life in which we live, we need to go back. We need to get a bigger view of what we are seeing. We may have to go even further back. And even further. And suddenly we realize that whether we are looking through the microscope or through the telescope, there is such similarity between the two. And this is no accident. This, I believe, is a sign to us, a sign for people who are able to read the signs. And we shall go into this a little closer. In order to understand the bigger picture, we need to know where we came from. We need to know where we are right now. And by drawing a line between where we came from and where we are, we should be able to determine where we are heading. If we were to take this illustration, this pot represents the present. This is where we are right now. Point A and point B are two perspectives of where we came from. The one is the point of view of creation, that mankind is the product of intelligent design. Point B tells us that we are the product of evolution,